Got it.
Well, good evening and welcome to another exciting episode of Love Not Fear. I'm Jack Cox, author of Love Not Fear, and I'm with my gorgeous co-host any day, who's written two scrumptious books.
Orgasmic Health and Your Guide to Feeling Fabulous Fast.
All right, well, tonight we're going to be talking about, what are we talking about, Annie?
The Lost Lands, Lemuria, Avalon and Atlantis.
That's right. And as you probably know, we spoke a little bit about Atlantis before, and we've spoken a little bit about
Avalon
before, but
yeah,
going to be doing it again.
Indeed, but in more depth.
We haven't spoken about Lemuria before.
No.
So, Atlantis, Lemuria, and Avalon. In recent years, many pieces of evidence have been emerging, proving the existence of ancient mythical continents, which were flourishing with life thousands of years ago.
Yay!
An example which scientists agree on.
Oh my God, there's a first.
Continent of Zealandia.
Indeed.
Today, most of the landmass, 94%, remains submerged beneath the Pacific Ocean. New Zealand is the largest part of Zealandia that is above sea level. The continent was around 5 million square kilometers in size.
Wow.
Two lost land masses, which are less well accepted by the mainstream media, are Atlantis and Lemuria.
What would they know?
Now, we dealt with Atlantis in some depth, didn't we, Annie, on this channel a few months back. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here.
Yeah.
But I will put a link in the description below so you can watch the original video.
Okay, fantastic.
We know, I'm just going to do I'm just going to talk about the boring stuff, okay, very briefly. And then Annie's going to talk about the really, really exciting stuff.
Ooh, I'm on there. Woohoo!
So we know that the knowledge of Atlantis arrived in the West from Solon, who was the ancestor of Plato.
Indeed.
Solon traveled in Egypt, where he learnt the story from the priests. It then became popularized by Plato a century or so later.
Yes, indeed.
Interestingly, the date that Plato sets for the destruction of Atlantis coincides precisely with the end of the last ice age and the flood that occurred when, according to the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, a giant comet exploded over the Laurentide ice sheet, which covered most of Canada and northern USA, causing it to melt, which started a reaction around the world. This great flood that was recorded in the Bible and in many other ancient cultures around the world,
yeah,
caused sea levels to rise by about 100 meters.
Yeah.
No one knows the exact location of Atlantis, although there are lots of theories. Some people like to think that it was in Antarctica.
Yeah.
I prefer to believe it was in Northwest Africa.
Yeah. And even Malaysia, I've seen maps that have been superimposed on Indonesia, Malaysia, Java, and it's a good fit. We'll just say that.
Would that have been Atlantis or would that have been Lemuria?
That was Lemuria, yeah.
You're not very loud, Annie. I can hardly hear you.
Oh, can't have that.
Might be my system.
I'm very odd. I'm usually very loud.
Hang on, it's probably my system.
Is it?
I haven't got time to stop now anyway because we're recording.
No. I've turned it up to maximum volume now, Shug. So that's to the trick.
Plato said that it lay just beyond the Straits of Gibraltar, which he called the Pillars of Hercules.
Yeah.
So that northwest corner of Africa is an ideal place. I refer to the Richard structure in Mauritania, where the exact concentric circles that Plato described can still be seen today above ground.
Yay!
Is evidence that the area was flooded in the past.
Yeah.
And legend has it that the first king of Atlantis was Atlas. Whether that's the Titan or a man of the same name is not clear.
Yeah.
And just to the north of the Richard structure lay the Atlas Mountains. So it all tends to hang together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, now let's look at Lemuria. We haven't actually talked about Lemuria on this channel before.
No.
Lemuria is believed to have spanned both the Indian and Pacific Oceans.
Yeah.
And was probably destroyed by the same flood that destroyed Atlantis.
Yeah.
So not just a lost city, but a huge continent, stretching from near Madagascar to close to Australia.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the Tamil people of Sri Lanka claim to be from there.
Yeah.
I'm sure Annie is going to go into a lot more of the exotic aspects, esoteric aspects of Lemuria. So I'm not going to deal with any of that here in this brief introduction.
Okay.
The first time scientists started to talk about this land was during the mid-1800s, when a British lawyer and zoologist, Philip Skater, wrote a paper entitled The Mammals of Madagascar. Skater found that lemur fossils were extremely abundant in Madagascar and in India.
Yeah.
Totally absent from Africa.
Indeed.
The observation led Skaler to propose that at one point in the distant past, India and Madagascar were connected by land and were part of a broader continent. And many other scientists have proposed the existence of such a continent as well.
Yeah.
In 1859, the British naturalist Alfred Wallace proposed that only a sunken continent could explain the fauna found on the island of Celebes in Indonesia.
Yeah.
The German zoologist and naturalist and marine biologist Ernst Haeckel discovered and named thousands of new species. In his 1869 book, The History of Creation, he proposed the theory that the earliest humans might have descended from Asian primates and placed the cradle of humanity in Asia, Africa, and on the lost continent in the Indian Ocean. His theory was also accepted by the scientific community, as this could explain the possible migration route of early humans from Africa to Indonesia. Haeckel even made the first hypothetical map of Lemuria, which he simply called Paradise.
Indeed.
According to his map, the continent was a land bridge connecting Central East Africa all the way to the Philippines.
Yeah.
In 1888, the Russian psychic, occultist, and founder of the Theosophical Society, Helena Blavatsky, published her book, The Secret Doctrine. In it, she gives fascinating information about Lemuria. She proposes that Lemuria was the cradle of one of the 7 races of humanity.
Yeah.
She believed that millions of years ago, an ancient humanoid race coexisted with dinosaurs. These beings supposedly possessed 4 arms and were egg-laying hermaphrodites. Curiously, this description is very similar to some of the ancient Hindu deities, which were often depicted with 4 arms.
Yeah.
But Perhaps that's where she got the idea.
Kali and Lakshmi are all portrayed, even to this day, aren't they, with loads of multitasking arms as divine feminine.
Andrew's joining us.
Hi, Andrew.
Not sure he's quite there yet, but he's joining us.
I've never been altogether there.
Right, it is Andrew, because I can hardly hear him as well. So it's obviously my sound.
Oh, okay.
Well, I can't do much about it at the moment, so I'm just going to have to
Yeah.
pin me nuggles back and listen intently. We're talking about Atlantis, Lemuria, and the Isle of Avalon.
All the lost lands.
The lost lands. What's Welsh for lost lands? I know it means something slightly different. Lemuria or something, isn't it?
I don't know, Jack.
They use it to refer to England, of course.
Is it Albion?
Sorry?
Is it Albion?
England is Albion. It's the dragon energy, isn't it? And the ley lines is called Albion.
Or something like that.
Okay. Perhaps that wasn't helpful.
I'm sure any Welsh viewers will tell me off.
Yeah.
My awful Welsh pronunciation. Anyway, getting back to Lemuria.
Yes,
the ancient Sanskrit texts contain plenty of evidence which suggests that some of the legends are actually real.
Yeah. No, without doubt.
Now, this is where we're going to talk about the monkeys, Annie.
Yeah, Jack started telling me just before we started that he's going to talk about monkeys. I was like, monkeys?
It's a little bit of a stretch because it's not technically Lemuria, but it's still an interesting story from the region.
Okay, no, go for it, Jack. That's what we're about, isn't it?
One example is this story about Lord Rama and his humanoid monkey army, which built a massive bridge between mainland India and Sri Lanka to rescue Lord Rama's wife, who had been imprisoned there. Of course, no one apart from the Hindus took this story seriously until satellite images taken by NASA revealed evidence of a collapsed ancient bridge, now partially submerged beneath the ocean.
Okay.
The Sanskrit texts even describe the building process in great detail and even name the chief engineer, a man named Nala. The text gives details of all the materials used for the construction, which has since been verified by divers. Large and small stones were piled on top of the big stones, and a flat finished level was arranged. The monkey people, known as the Vanara, even held ropes on both sides of the bridge to build it in proper linear alignment. The story was confirmed to be a true historical event when Dr. Narayan, the former director of Geological Survey of India, examined the structure, and his team drilled 10 boreholes along the alignment of the bridge. It was obvious that the ancient bridge was man-made. According to a study conducted by the Madras University and Anna University, the bridge was made over 18,000 years ago.
Yay.
Although incredibly, they still claim it to be a natural formation.
What a load of BS.
I think
I printed it up. I was going to say another word that ends in ollocks.
Now, other scientists believe it was built 1.7 million years ago.
Yeah.
A time when modern humans didn't even exist.
Indeedy.
So if that date was true, then this would have been the time of Homo erectus.
Yeah.
Could the humanoid monkey army of Rama be the early ancestors of modern humans? It's an interesting thought anyway.
It is, if we actually believe that Darwin wasn't a Freemason and wasn't bribed to say what he said. Maybe it's Planet of the Apes, Jack.
Although Homo erectus wouldn't have had the intellectual capacity required to build anything, they certainly had the physical strength.
Yeah.
There were ancient higher beings like Rama who could have guided the Homo erectus and to use them for construction. This would certainly fit the narrative we've talked about on this channel many times before,
Yeah.
about the Anunnaki using our ancestors as slaves.
Yeah. To dig for gold.
According to legend, after the bridge was constructed, Lord Rama led his army through it and successfully defeated the captor of his wife and liberated her.
Yay.
Now it gets interesting.
Oh, Andrew's saying it's 18 miles long.
Yeah, it's a big, long bridge. On his way home, he flew in his Vimana, which, according to ancient Sanskrit texts, is some kind of flying vehicle used by
Indeed.
many of these blue-skinned beings. A device that today we would call a UFO. Getting back to Lemuria. The ancient Tamil culture of South India is claimed to predate both Sumerian and Egyptian civilizations.
Yeah.
Their traditions refer to extensive lands submerged in the remote past that had once existed in the Indian Ocean. They have a word for such happenings. They call it Kadaktal, meaning the sea devouring the land. Their name for the lost lands that we call Lemuria is Kamari Kandam.
Yeah.
They say that at the time of those inundations, Kamari Kandam was home to a high Tamil civilization. The Sangam literature, which is the earliest known literature of southern India, tells of their incredible story.
Yeah.
A lot of people believe that not just the Tamil, but the whole of humanity is descended from the dwellers of Kamari Kandam.
Yeah.
They believe that Tamil culture is the foundation of many enlightened cultures, and indeed Tamil is the mother language of a variety of other languages throughout that part of the world.
Yeah, sure.
However,
Makes sense, actually.
Hmm?
It makes sense.
Yeah. However, according to mainstream researchers, the lost continent was separated from the mainland sometime during the Mesozoic era, the time of the dinosaurs, not at the end of the last ice age. Nevertheless, according to India's National Institute of Oceanography, sea levels were around 100 meters lower some 15,000 years ago.
Yeah.
During the last ice age. So I believe it, leave it to you to make your own minds up.
Yeah, indeed.
The island of Avalon. Now, we've talked so much about this.
Oh, we have. One of
A month
my favourite
ago.
places, Jack, and yours.
In a wonderful, beautiful show that we did on Glastonbury.
Yeah.
And I'll put the link below.
Oh, well done, Jack. Yeah, quick thinking.
The story of the island of Avalon, at least in modern times, is much easier to understand.
Yeah.
The island of Avalon forms the heart of the town in Somerset we now call Glastonbury.
Yeah.
Which was an island until the wetlands known as the Somerset Levels were drained.
Yeah.
During the Middle Ages, the monasteries at Glastonbury and a couple of other surrounding places drained the levels. Dutch engineers arrived to drain the levels in the 17th century. Farmers have managed the landscape ever since. Now, over to you, Annie. You can tell us more about the legends, all the esoteric stuff.
Okay. So, Lemuria. So some of you know already that I'm a naturopath. I'm also a master teacher of Egyptian Sekhem, and we've been taught for a very long time. I've got loads of references that have been told the same story, but basically the story is that Egyptian Sekhem is from the star system Sirius, and the star system Sirius is said to have been the first inhabitants to colonize really beautiful souls, really spiritual, with many gifts, and they were helped by the Dogon tribe. Well, you may remember that the Dogon tribe actually saw the flight path of Sirius long before we had telescopes that could see that the flight path of Sirius is actually an infinity symbol. So these so-called uncivilized people, which clearly is a load of BS, were able to see, because of their consciousness, were able to see the flight path of the planet Sirius. And also they believed that Lemuria was had some of the most spiritual inhabitants who were very multi-dimensional, multi-talented, multi-skilled, and were wonderful healers, and that Lemuria and Egypt were Egypt and Atlantis were colonies of Sirius and Lemuria, basically. So quite often the chronology gets a bit mixed up, but that's what I've always been taught, and it makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, I tend to believe that they were off-world people that came here.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't believe that some of the stories that say that they were I don't know, that they were low vibrational people. I just really can't believe that that's the case. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to give us this healing energy.
Groups that came here.
Sorry?
And
I
indeed,
missed that, Jack. Say it again.
I think there were different groups that came here.
Oh, indeed.
Different ET groups. And indeed, the ancient stories talk about a war in heaven, don't they?
Mm.
Which is probably where the good ETs chased off the bad ETs.
Yeah. And went, no, we're going to make sure that they know about the infinite love that, you know, that's all about Egyptian Sekhem. So that's the version I've got. So Lemuria is the name of a so-called mythological lost land, which is said to have been located in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Again, a lot of what I'm going to say is you've already said already, Jack. It's said in Tamil legends to have been civilized over 20,000 years ago, with its population speaking Tamil. The concept of Lemuria has been rendered by, let's say, some modern understanding of plate tectonics and continental drift, which have sadly somewhat disproven the past existence of a lost continent. I'm not sure that that isn't a bit like the Smithsonian's hiding all the giants' bones, Jack. I'm really not sure that this is coherent science, because quite often what we're told is science isn't. And, you know, a lot of Graham Hancock stuff is all about the archaeology that's been hidden. So I'm not completely buying this.
Well, the whole point about science is it's constantly changing. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as settled science. It's an oxymoron.
Isn't exactly.
Science is constantly evolving.
Yeah, it can't be any other way, can it?
And old ideas become discredited.
Indeed, darling. However, it does persist in the literature of Graham Hancock, an archaeological researcher, and has been used as a location and inspiration in a wide range of novels, films, and music. In 1896, a map of Lemuria was superimposed over the modern continents from Scott Eliot's The Story of Atlantis and Lost Lemuria. Lemuria gained popularity through the works of Helena Blavatsky, a co-founder of Theophosophy. I'll try and say this properly. This is quite a word for me.
Put your teeth in, Annie.
Oh, it's a bit worse than that. A co-founder of the Theosophical Society. There you go. I've said it. Woohoo!
Well done.
Who claimed that the Mahatmas had shown her an ancient pre-Atlantean book of Daizan. Lemuria is mentioned in one of the 1882 Mahatma letters to AP Sinnott. According to L. Sprague de Camp, Blavatsky's concept of Lemuria was influenced by other contemporary writers on the theme of lost continents, notably Ignatius L. Donnelly, a researcher and writer, Thomas Lake Harris, and the French writer Louis Jacollet. Other literature written about Lemuria was by other Theosophical Societies writers and by Rudolf Steiner, the founder of anthroposophy. Sorry, I'm trying not to make this sound really dirty, but clearly missing the mark completely.
No, you're doing a good job, Annie. You're doing a brilliant job.
Thank you. The founder of anthroposophy, who drew upon books by James Churchward that identified Lemuria as Mu. Within Blavatsky's complex cosmology, the third root race occupied Lemuria. She described them, much as you said earlier, as 7 feet tall, spiritually more pure than the following root races. Before the coming of the Lemurians, the second root race is said to have dwelled in Hyperborea after the subsequent creation of mammals. A later author, William Scott Eliot, gave one of the most elaborate accounts of lost continents. He received his knowledge from Charles Webster Leadbetter, who reportedly communicated with the ascended masters by astral clairvoyance. In 1896, he published The Story of Atlantis, followed in 1904 by The Lost Lemuria, in which he included a map of the continent of Lemuria as stretching from the east coast of Africa across the Indian and the Pacific Oceans, which again is what you said, wasn't it?
It's a big place.
It really is, Jack, isn't it? The Theosophical Society co-founder, Henry Steele Olcott, brought ideas about Lemuria to Sri Lanka in the context of his Buddhist beliefs, thereby introducing the idea about Tamil culture. James Bramwell portrayed Lemuria in his book Lost Atlantis as a continent that occupied a large part of what is now the South Pacific Ocean. He described the people of Lemuria in detail and characterized them as one of the root races of humanity. According to Bramwell, Lemurians are the ancestors of the Atlanteans. Which is what I believe as well, not the other. Sometimes it's said that it was Atlantis and then Lemuria. I really don't believe that from all the research I've done. I think it's Lemuria first and then Atlantis.
Another story, another version is that they were both coexisting at the same time, and the world was actually ruled by these two great powers.
Yeah, I've read that too, Jack. Blavatsky theorized that Australia was a remnant inland region of Lemuria, and that Aboriginal Australians and Aboriginal Tasmanians were of Lemurian and Lemurian Atlantean origins.
It was certainly make a lot of sense, wasn't it? Because there's so much that's not known about how the Australian Aborigines got there.
Yeah. And their spirituality is quite unique, isn't it?
Yeah, if there was this huge continent, where there's no ocean, it
Yeah.
would explain that perfectly.
Yeah, it just makes a lot of sense, doesn't it, Jack?
Mm.
Yeah, to me too. Mount Shasta in 1894, Frederick Spencer Oliver published A Dweller on Two Planets, which claimed that survivors from a sunken continent called Lemuria were living in or on Mount Shasta in Northern California. And I know that's the home of Archangel Uriel as well. So I've done a lot of research on angels over the years, and that's where he's said to preside. Oliver claimed that Lemurians lived in a complex of tunnels beneath the mountains and occasionally were seen walking the surface dressed in white robes. And then you've mentioned Kumari Kandam earlier, haven't you?
Mm. Before we move on, I just want to say briefly, nobody knows for sure, but I've read a possibility that some of the Lemurians escaped and went underground,
Yeah,
while some of them spread out over the world to become their teachers and shamans and spiritual leaders around the world.
Yeah. And many years ago, someone explained the word to Old Lang Syne, that it was exactly that. Some Lemurians, I think they called them the Great Council, that was over everybody.
Mm.
And so it was decided that some would go underground and some would go across the world and spread love and magic and healing. And I've always cried when I hear Old Lang Syne, and I never really kind of understood until I read that account saying that sometimes it would be that husband and wife would be parted, that let's say the wife needed to go underground and the husband needed to be going out to the world as a teacher or whatever. And so that sadness that we sing, and actually the words don't really make a lot of sense, but the way they broke it down was that exactly that story that you just talked about, Jack, which does make sense, doesn't it? Kumara Kandam, some Tamil writers such as Devanaya Havana have associated Lemuria with Kumari Kandam, a legendary sunken landmass mentioned in the Tamil literature, claiming that it was the cradle of civilization. Shaver's I Remember Lemuria was the cover story in the March 1945 Amazing Stories. Whilst George Firth Scott is best known for his novel, The Last Lemurian, a Westralian romance, which was published in 1898. Two implicit references to Lemuria are found in J.R.R. Tolkien's artwork in the world map printed in The Shaping of Middle-earth. The continent labelled Darkland and Southland is a Lemurian analogue. And in his watercolour illustration of the Earth, as seen from the moon, shows the continent of both Atlantis and Lemuria.
Interesting.
I know.
He knew a few things, that guy.
Oh, he was way before his time. I really believe the Shires are the Shires. And what he was talking about was the Dark Cabal and the spiders and all the evilness and the corruption of power. He was telling us what was to come. I really believe that.
I think he was, yeah.
I've thought it for a long time. In the Pere Rodin series, Lemuria was the home continent of the Lemurians, also called the first humanity, 50,000 years ago. In Daniel Pinkwater's 1979 novel, Alan Mendelssohn, The Boy from Mars, the myth of Lemuria and other lost places is used by travellers from other worlds as a way to refer to their cultures without revealing their origins. Lemuria is also referenced heavily in the plot. The Golden Voyage of Sinbad, my kids used to love this. The 1973 film's adventures takes place mostly on Lemuria.
Oh,
In
yeah.
in the 1978 television series Battlestar Galactica, 1978 TV series, I bet you remembered Battlestar Galactica, with the very hot boys and girls in.
I certainly remember that, young Annie.
So the opening prologue refers to the lost civilizations of Lemuria. My belief is both Atlantis and Egypt were colonies of Mu or Lemuria, as referenced by Robert Masters in Sekhmet, the goddess of healing.
Beautiful.
So what do you want to do next? I'll do Atlantis. I'll just sketch over it a bit. So we've done a bit
Yeah,
on
no,
this
do
already.
it. Go do as much as you want on it, Annie.
Okay. Ooh, I put my coloured paper clips on and I can't get them off. In the writing of the ancient Greek philosopher Plato had not contained so much truth about the human condition, his name would have been forgotten centuries ago. One of his most famous stories describes the cataclysmic destruction of the ancient civilization of Atlantis. Plato told the story of Atlantis around 360 BC. The founders of Atlantis, he said, were half god and half human. They created a utopian civilization and became a great naval power. Their home was made up of concentric islands, separated by wide moats and linked by a canal that penetrated to the center. The lush islands contained gold, silver, and other precious metals, and supported an abundance of rare, exotic wildlife. There was a great capital city on this central island. There are many theories about where if I could talk about it, wouldn't it? I will start that one again. There are many theories about where Atlantis was, in the Mediterranean, off the coast of Spain, even under what is now called Antarctica. Plato said Atlantis existed about 9,000 years before his own time, and that its story had been passed down by poets, priests, and others. Plato's writings about Atlantis are the only known records of its existence. Many researchers think Atlantis did actually exist. Ocean explorer Robert Ballard, the National Geographic explorer in residence, who discovered the wreck of the Titanic in 1985, notes that many have said that what Plato wrote about Atlantis is actually true. Ballard says that the legend of Atlantis is a logical one, since cataclysmic floods and volcanic explosions have happened throughout history, including one event that had some similarities to the story of the destruction of Atlantis about 3,600 years ago, and that a massive volcanic eruption devastated the island of Santorini in the Aegean Sea near Greece. At the time, he reports a highly advanced society of Minoans lived on Santorini with multi-dimensional powers. Whilst George Aaron Barton discovered fragments of a series of ancient texts that he believed was one of the oldest texts in the world and was 9 tablets long. His translation of it was published in a volume called Miscellaneous Babylonian Inscriptions, published in 1918. Half a century then passed when in the 1970s, a copy of his book was rediscovered by a geologist named Christian O'Brien, who had spent many years of his life working for British Petroleum in the Middle East. He was gifted in translated cuneiform script and reread the scripts, finding that it was not just a creation myth featuring Sumerian gods. It was a down-to-earth account of how a group called the Anunnaki built an agricultural community called Karasag on a plateau in the mountain region, which is what you were saying earlier, wasn't it, Jack?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. We've talked about that several times on this show over the years.
This settlement was also known as Aideen, which, as O'Brien points out, reminds us of the word Eden.
Yeah, very similar.
Isn't it? Readers of Zachariah Sitchin's Earth Chronicles will immediately recognise the Anunnaki as the beings of the 12th planet Nibiru, who the author claims came to Earth nearly 500,000 years ago in search of gold to be used for protecting their atmosphere from deterioration. Sitchin finds the evidence for those space beings in the Old Testament and in various Sumerian texts. We've said this loads of times that a lot of this comes from Sumeria, doesn't it?
Yeah, and we don't forget that Abraham and Sarah came from Sumeria.
Yeah, exactly.
They would have taken those. They would have taken those stories with them.
Yeah, absolutely. He believes that they actually created man as a slave race to mine gold.
Yeah.
Whereas Christian O'Brien and his wife reject this notion. In their book, The Genius of the Few, they are students of Eastern religions and believe it is more like a parallel dimension, where star beings with a high vibration and where multidimensional beings that they call the Shining Ones.
Mm.
Colin Wilson set out to track down the truth about these scholars' statements. He studied the world's most sacred sites, including Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, and the Great Pyramids, that led him to an amazing discovery. These monuments formed a powerful and undeniable geometric pattern, implying the existence of an advanced ancient civilization whose knowledge of the world was far wider than had been previously thought. He provides compelling evidence that Atlantis not only existed, but was in fact the cradle of an advanced and highly sophisticated civilization that spanned the world as far back as 100,000 years ago. There are many who believe that although these Atlanteans were sophisticated, moral, spiritual people who lived in a highly advanced utopian civilization, they became greedy, petty, morally bankrupt, misusing their power and ultimately destroying their world.
Yeah, and this is one of the stories that I heard was that towards the end,
Yeah,
just before the flood, Atlantis and Sumeria were in conflict.
Yeah.
Because Atlantis had gone to the dark side. Sumeria hadn't.
Yeah. No, that's what I've heard as well. But literally, if we were to compare it with the present moment, the Lemurians are the spiritually gifted, the star-seeded, truth-speaking light workers, and Atlantis had become the dark cabal. If you, oh, this is from Andrew. If you have a look at the Atlantic seabed, the central part of it is, oops, it's gone. Let me get it again.
Unmute yourself, Andrew.
If you have a look at the Atlantic seabed, the central part of it is much higher than the American and Afro-European seaboards. Are you going to unmute yourself, Andrew?
As you're talking,
turned into a tree.
As you're talking, I'm just having a look online, and I found a map, and it shows the center of the gap between America, the Americas, and Europe and Africa. It's just like a backbone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that could be. I mean, Atlantis, when I've heard it, I come to these shows, as you know, with very little understanding other than that which you've already shared with me on previous shows. But I've always thought Atlantis, that is the Atlantic, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then I've thought, well, if it's Plato that's brought this subject matter to us, then it's probably in the Mediterranean. But having looked at the map, if the sea level drops, then there is this great stretch of land all the way from island, the Irish coast, right the way down to the Cape, the two capes, Cape of Good Horn and Cape of wherever it is in South America. They're just this backbone all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. So you drop the sea level and you've got a continent.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
I'll mute.
Okay.
I'm sure Atlantis was much bigger than just the city.
Oh, massively. Yeah.
I mean, we talk about the city, which could, because I say, could well have been the Vichyov structure. But the landmass would have been huge.
Yeah. It would have to be to support so many of the population, wouldn't it? And it was said to be bigger than Lemuria, and Lemuria was said to be really vast. So it makes sense, doesn't it, Jack, that it would have to be cover a lot of landmass, basically. And yeah, I think some of what people are describing about Atlantis is just Atlantis city, and not the, not the wider area, basically.
I think there were these two huge empires.
Indeed. Yeah, same. I was told in a past life regression some years ago that the reason this one particular person has been really horrid to me was that I was in Lemuria and I'd gone to Atlantis and said to this particular group that was the equivalent of the Dark Cabal, you have got to stop doing what you're doing. This being power hungry and being manipulative and controlling will destroy our world. So they had me killed the next day. That shut me up temporarily till I came back round again. It's not stopped me from being outspoken, has it really? So clearly it didn't work.
Annie, nothing will stop you being outspoken.
So yes, somebody having me bumped off because I was telling the truth isn't going to stop me from doing that this lifetime, is it? So Avalon, and one of our favourite places, Jack, isn't it?
My favourite place in the world.
Oh my gosh, I'm so looking forward to going there soon. So Avalon, or Insula Avalonis, the legendary island of Celtic mythology, is where, according to some sources, King Arthur's Excalibur sword was forged. It is also the place where the mythical king was taken, fatally wounded, to meet his death. In short, Avalon is a utopian paradise where the legends of English knights and political wholeness unite in a kingdom lost in the mists of time.
Yeah.
It is the place where the famous witch Morgana lived. Some say she's the half-sister of King Arthur, and where, according to legends, apples grew all the year round. The first mention of this place is found in Histories of the Kings of Britain, 1136, by Geoffrey of Monmouth. It is believed that its name means the island of apples. As in the Breton language, Aval is the name of that fruit. The island of Avalon has also been called Ennis Witrin, meaning islands of crystals, a name that makes clear reference to the place's mystical, magical qualities. Yay! Like all mythological paradises, this place has been sought in all corners of the earth. Some scholars, and me, say that they have found it in Glastonbury, Somerset, where before the plains were drained, the hill of Glastonbury Tor rose above the marshes. Legend has it that in the 12th century, King Edward II of England sent an expedition to this place, which led to the discovery of the sarcophagus of King Arthur, which was later taken to Glastonbury Abbey. There are many other towns in England where it is said that the mythical Avalon existed. Bird by Sands, close to Hadrian's Wall, Castlesteads, both in the English county of Cumbria, are two such examples. Some say it was located in northwest France on an island called the Ile Aval, which again means apples. And finally, the poet Robert Graves, in his book, The Golden Fleece, proposes that Avalon is on the Spanish island of Mallorca. Some experts...
Don't forget, going back to what you were saying, don't forget that in Celtic times, Brittany was part of the Celtic Empire.
Mm.
It was the last part of France to be taken over by the Franks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure, darling. Some experts believe there is a connection between Avalon and Helheim, the kingdom of the dead in Scandinavian mythology. Everybody at the end of the day wants Avalon to be in their part of the world.
Oh, yes.
Oh, but we know it's ours. We know it's ours. The fascinating myth says that after the Battle of Caman, in which after clashing with Mordred, King Arthur was mortally wounded, the king was taken to Avalon on a boat by the 9 fairy queens. I loved this bit. Morgana, Moronro, Mazo, Glitten, Glittonia, Glittenwell, Tirone, Thiten, and Thiton.
Unfortunately, fairy queens would have a totally different meaning today.
When I thought I'll have a little read through so I don't trip over my words, as I sometimes do.
Well done, well done.
And then I was doing this and it all sounded like clitoris, and I was thinking, I don't know that I should be pronouncing it like this, but anyway, it is done. There they laid him upon a golden bed, where according to many sources, Morgana remains to this day watching over his body.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's a beautiful story.
Isn't it?
In Ireland too, I mentioned that before on the other show.
Yeah.
Finn and the Fianna.
Yeah.
Fianna being the war band.
Yeah.
Supposed to be resting under Tower Hill.
Yeah. And again, the fairies helping him. That makes perfect sense to me.
And Arthur and his war band are supposed to be buried under the Tor.
Yeah. And it's said that they'll come up in our hour of need. Well, I think our hour of need is here right now.
I think it's well and truly been and gone and passed. There you go. Been and gone and went, as my dad used to say.
So there are also versions that say Arthur did not die and that he will return to guide his people when they are ready for an evolutionary shift. I'm ready. I'm ready,
please.
According to Monmouth in Vitae Melini, a wonderful book, to reach Avalon, it is necessary to undertake a sea voyage. The historian maintains that on that island, nature produced grain, apples, and grapes by itself without the need to sow, plough, or cultivate. He also says that whomever lives in Avalon will live to be 100 years. So, Jack, there you go, mate. There you go. We're going to be living to 100. Avalon has been for centuries a mythical place that symbolizes purity, abundance, and magic, and which is the reason for the strong significance it has had in Western culture for so many years. It is a terrestrial utopia, and at the same time, a point of political reference of a time when rulers and their knights were brave, honest, and virtuous, a harmonious bridge between the earthly and the celestial, between what is and what some would like it to be. These are beautiful values, and there are the 9 fairies that are still guarding King Arthur and his paradise of apples for eternity.
That's a beautiful story, Annie.
I like beautiful stories with happy endings. I do.
So before we close, do you want to tell us a little bit about your workshop again that you told us about last week?
The dragon workshop. So yeah, I'm holding a dragon workshop I will just check the date that I'm giving you. It's on the 30th of April this year, and it's 10 till 3 at Heaven Sent Bliss, which is my beautiful practice in sunny Stafford, and it is £55 for the day. You get a manual and you get a certificate of being able to contact and communicate with dragons.
So I put Annie's details every week down in the description. For the
Thank you, darling.
Heaven Sent Bliss sanctuary. So please do contact her via that and sign up for the workshop. And
for those who are interested, quite often the fairy workshop and also the dragon workshops attracts a lot of crystal and indigo children, let's say very spiritually gifted little children. So if you've got a family and you want to come on the workshop, only one adult need pay and the children get in free, because I really want to help all the children to just reach their full potential.
That's beautiful, Annie. That's gorgeous of you. You're a generous soul, aren't you? Love your generous soul.
Oh, thank you, Jack.
No, I mean it, Annie. You really are.
Thank you. Thank you.
Andrew, you got anything to add?
Another informative evening. Thank you very much, both of you. I shall have to catch up with Jack's earlier comments that I missed, but I love this talk. You know, I'd just love to hear about magical places, and there's something, isn't there, within the human spirit that says, please tell me something better than what we're experiencing. You know, the stuff that the media is throwing out at us every day, we need to hear some good news. We need to hear something that lifts us and makes us feel better about ourselves and about our lives. And that is one of the things this show does. So I'm very, very privileged to be able to be part of it, and thank you both very much again for a wonderful evening.
We're privileged to have you here, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
You're a blessing to me. Thank you.
I'd just like to add that the story of Arthur being and his men being buried under the Tor, and Finn and Fianna being buried under Tower Hill. Maybe that's not meant to be taken literally. Maybe the time of need is an inner journey that we can take.
Darling.
To meet the archetypes that they represent.
That's virtuous, that's honest, that's authentic, that's genuine, that's strong and bright. Oh, I forgot to tell you about books.
Oh, books. Yeah, go on.
You know? So again, because I run a library at Heaven Sent Bliss, one of my lovely students has borrowed a book called The Lost Lands, Avalon, Lemuria and Atlantis by a lady called Lucy Cavendish. But I don't have the book because one of my lovely people has loaned it. But the other book that I got some of the references from is this.
And Andrew, just a minute, Andrew. Just a minute, Annie. Andrew's holding up my book. Say something, Andrew, so people can see it.
So yes, I finally got my own physical copy of Jack's book. So I'm looking forward to reading that.
That's brilliant, Andrew. Thank you. Let me know what you think when you read it.
I think we know he'll love it, Jack Cox. He's going to love it.
Anyway, sorry.
No, that's fine. I didn't see Andrew do that. So this is the Atlantis.
Andrew, say something. You won't record if you don't say something.
And of course, there is somebody else who's written not one book, but two. Where's the other one gone?
Marvelous how you can get it out of a tree, isn't it?
You see, books do grow on trees.
However, we mustn't forget this one.
Oh no!
All you need is
love. La 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 la. All you need
It
is
is love, love.
all you need is love, love. Love is all you need.
It was worth it to show my book so that I heard Annie sing it and the backing vocals of Jack.
And see, we're good, aren't we, Jack?
If you want to find out more about Andrew's book, I'll put a link below in the description. But we did a show the other Friday with Andrew, so
really was
please
great.
do watch that if you want to find out more about his book.
So
Annie,
if you're interested, this book is called The Atlantis Blueprint, and a lot of what I used this evening came out of that book.
The Atlantis Blueprint, okay.
And it's by Rand Flemath and Colin Wilson.
I just remember one of those names.
So what do you fancy talking about next week, Jack Cox?
Oh.
Okay, so this has popped
I
into
can't
my
think
head.
that far ahead, Annie.
Okay, well I can, because I'm a multitasking, multidimensional being. So what's kept coming to me today is numerology. Do you fancy having a shot at numerology? If you don't, let's not do it. Because it's got to be that both of us fancy doing it.
Do you think we can do a whole show for the whole hour with numerology?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, see if we do numerology and astrology together.
Do you know a lot about astrology?
Nope.
No, me neither. It's going to be a bit of a sharp learning. Mind you, a lot of our shows have been a bit of a sharp learning curve where we've gone, I don't know much about this, but I know a little bit, and then we'll just research the rest. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
we'll
What else
sort it
could we
out.
do?
We'll sort it out. Okay, folks, numerology next week. If you're watching on YouTube, please do like, share, and subscribe. It enables us to reach more people, and it gives us some confidence to carry on. And there are times we really need confidence to carry on.
You're so right, darling.
Thank you so much, Annie, for being a wonderful co-host.
Thank you, Jack Cox, for being an amazing co-host.
Thank you, Andrew, for being our regular attendee every week.
Yay!
And we really do appreciate you as well. And many, many thanks to all the people that are going to be watching this later on YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't think this show is going to need any editing, so it'll be up tonight.
Perfect. Yay! Thanks, Jack.
Namaste.
Namaste.